As they came down, they were jumping over their own dead, charging in toward us with their bayonets and again port arms. I got into one guy that didn't want to go any further than me, I think, and he and I got into it. I started falling, and as I was falling, he lunged at me, and he stuck me in the stomach, and I fell. And about that time, the kid next to me, it was big in there, he saw the problem that I was having, and he shot him in the back. He fell down on top of me. He wasn't dead yet. When I fell, my hand hit the gung-ho knife that I had been using, and I pulled it out of the ground like that, and I just came up from it, and then I slit his throat. Well, the first thing, I was sitting at the kitchen table making balsa wood airplanes for Woolworth's five and dime store. I would make an airplane, and they'd hang it up in their store for advertising, and then they would give me one for doing that as well. So then that way I had a collection at that time of a lot of airplanes on it. So, and had radio on, and they broke in the radio on the radio. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was our president at the time, and he says, "We are at war."
So you were 16 years old when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
When did you join the Marines?
I tried to join about 2 weeks after I heard the news on it. So, but I couldn't. I was 16. Legal age was 17 to get into a service at that time. You had to make the weight, and you had to make the height. So I tried on it. I tried with the Navy and the Army and the Marine Corps, but I liked the Marine Corps uniform. I went to boot camp, and in that period of time, my drill sergeant was A.H. Allen. I didn't know it at the time, but he came over. I was stationed I got out of boot camp, of course, and my first duty station was at Tongue Point, Oregon. Well, Allen also went to Tongue Point, Oregon, and to pick out the best there. And I made a pretty good impression on him because he was senior DI on it, and he knew me, and he knew what I stood for in boot camp. So they asked volunteers for a new outfit that was being built up at that particular time on it, which was called Raiders, and the president's son would be the commander. So I said, well, how bad and how dangerous could it be if you're letting the president's son be in there too? So anyway, so they interviewed me, and they said, well, can you have any problems of killing someone? I says, no. I said, if I'm told to kill someone, I said, I'd kill them. Just that. So he said, well, says, look on the bulletin board tomorrow morning and see if you're chosen. So I looked on the bulletin board the next morning, and I saw that I was number 1 on the list up there, and I was chosen to become attached to the Raider Battalion.
Moving ahead to when you joined the 3rd Division, 21st Regiment, on Guam. Tell me about coming ashore on Guam and the fight that followed.
We had to stay aboard ship, which was the USS Jackson, and we had to wait until Saipan was secure. And then after Saipan was secured, then the 21st Marines then went into Guam. Where we went, it was an open field, and we got and there was a old water buffalo out there in the field, and he kept eating, and the shells kept falling all around him, but didn't bother him at all. So, but we passed him up. And we said, well, we'll think about that, because we hadn't had any fresh meat for a long time. We figured, well, later on, if we get a chance to, we'll kill him and get some fresh meat to cooking. And we finally got into under the mortar fire that they were putting on us. And we got ready to bivouac down, and we went in there, went up on a little ridge, and at the top of the ridge we dug in for the evening. And then we had a Banzai attack from the Japanese, which was the first ones that we had at that time. They were had bayonets on, and it came down in a big swoop. And that was the first ones that I had been involved in.
Tell me more detail about the hand-to-hand fighting.
Well, in hand-to-hand fighting, you have a bayonet, and your enemy has a bayonet on it, and they came down, and they were at port arms when they came down from the hills on, and I cut one of them up on their wrist, and because when they had their hands up with and holding at port arms, they were opened for a slice if we wanted to, or wherever we wanted to. It was easy. I thought it was easy on it to kill them on it. So, and we killed all of them that came down the hill. So, but that's the only thing that we were doing at that particular time on that one.
Well, you were wounded, correct?
Well, not there.
Okay.
We went from there on over to past some pillboxes and stuff that we killed all of those that were in our way as we were going straight toward Asan. We got out to Asan on it, and which was I think 3 days, or 3 or 4 days, and we started to. We could hear all of the Japanese up on the hill from us, and they were drinking sake and hollering, and we could hear the tanks up on that hill, And so they started yelling, and they came down the hill on it. We started digging in. We were digging in toward for protection. I was still digging my hole, and I had my gung-ho knife that I was digging into the ground and then I had my little shovel and pushing them out and building up a little berm around my foxhole, and that was probably about 6-8 inches high, and had some place to put the dirt. And then started coming down the hill, standing behind their tanks for protection. And by that time, the 3rd Division tanks that were attached to the 3rd Division on it, the tank unit on it, landed just at the end of the road that came from the top of the hill down Asan, through Asan down, and that would go clear to the beach. And the tanks were coming in at the beach, and they just came down and got off of their LSTs and started up the hill to face those tanks. That turned out to be the largest tank battle of the Pacific War. All of the tanks that were on the island were up on that particular chart that was coming down the hill toward us on it. And they were yelling and screaming, and all the Yankee, go home and you go and Marine, you die, and all that stuff on it. And using their psychology of frightening the kids that were coming up the hill on it, and they were coming down the hill. And they came down in groves, and it turned out to be the largest bullseye attack of the Pacific War was right there, and we had it. And the tanks came up, and they met, and they had that big fight right there in front of us too on it. It was terrible. As they came down, they were jumping over their own dead and charging in toward us with their bayonets and, again, port arms. And I got into one guy that didn't want to go any further than me, I think. And he and I got into it pretty fair. And he was a lot larger than I. He had one of the large, long rifles on. Don't remember what kind that they were on it, but it was a large, lengthy type of rifle that his bayonet was on.
This week's episode, featuring a battlefield legend of the Pacific War, is sponsored by Hillsdale College. All of us watching today have one thing in common. We love history, and we love to learn. For all of us history buffs, Hillsdale College is now offering more than 40 online courses, all completely free. As you might expect, I'm enjoying Hillsdale's course, The Second World Wars, taught by Hillsdale President Larry P. Arnn and the acclaimed historian Victor Davis Hanson. This free 7-lecture course will help you dig deeper and understand this massive conflict in a new way. I was surprised to learn that Japan had the highest percentage of its military forces in its army during World War II. And there's so much more. Learn about the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, the history of the ancient Christian church, history, economics, the great works of literature. It's all available for free from Hillsdale College. Courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and wherever. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/American Veterans to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/American Veterans to enroll.
And we got fighting, and he was charging me more. And I was backing up, and I stumbled over that little berm that I was building up around my foxhole with my knife and shovel, and I stumbled backwards, and I started falling, and as I was falling, he lunged at me, and he stuck me in the stomach on it, and I fell. And about that time, the kid next to me, it was big in there, he saw the problem that I was having, and he shot him in the back. He fell down on top of me. He wasn't dead yet. But when I fell, my hand hit the gung-ho knife that I had been using, and then the gung-ho knife is what they gave us in the Raiders, and it was a little over a foot and a half, something like that on it. And I pulled it out of the ground on like that, and I just came up from it, and then I slit his throat. And I just had to bring it up over, and then it came down, slit his throat. And he started bleeding, and he bled all over me and all over my blouse that I had. And was wearing my Marine blouse. And when I cut his throat, he, of course, screamed and yelled, and he smelled of sake and fish. And it's a lot different when you're that close, and you can hear them, you scream, and you smell them, and it's a lot different than 50 yards or 100 yards or something like that in that, because this you're right in there with them. Anyway, I stayed there until the next morning, and then next morning, well, most of them all were gone up on the hill, back up on the hill, and they started counting noses and see which ones were dead and which one weren't. So they came over to me, and they said, "Hey, here's one guy that's it looks like he's done in, but he says he started moving, so he's not." So they took the dead off of me, and then helped me up on it, and they saw that I was wounded, and he put some sulfur and stuff, packed it in there with that, and then he put something, bandage of some sort, on top of the wound. Then he started to say, he said, "We got to keep going on it," because they were getting ready to go further up on the peninsula there. That's when they had a lot of pillboxes in that particular area from Masan, and they were going further on up. So I just put something up on my stomach on it like that, and put my cartridge belt tight over it, and I went on up, and they said, well, can you walk? I said, yes. I said, but he said, well, you put on there and said, well, you keep right on going until we can get where we can do a better job on your stomach. So I found another blouse that was on the dead guy. So I took his blouse off and I put it on. And because I was pretty well bloody at that time. And so I put that on and got in line, and we started going further on north, and went for a little while, and then I was getting a little bit weak from the loss of blood. They hollered that for a corpsman to come up from the headquarters company that was down there by where the tanks were. And he came up and he put a bandage tape, a tape bandage on my stomach, and he pulled the pieces, the skin together, and then put that on, and so it stopped the bleeding, and it was it's what really did a good job on that.
Frank, I need to move to the fight at Iwo Jima, which is several months after this now, February 1945. Let's start with...
It was 8 months.
It was 8 months later, okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with the landing. Tell me about the landing at Iwo Jima.
We trained for about 8 months after Guam secured, and the training was different than what we had trained in boot camp and in Banzai camp and our Raider camp. Entirely different. All right. And so we were a little dubious as to what the heck they had in store for us. But anyway, we went from our training and out and lined up, went over and went to our USS Jackson, and that was in February.
Tell me about the second time you were injured.
Well, we went through 2000. We went through airfield number 2. We got over on the other side of airfield number 2, and I found my scout and my BAR men over there by themselves on it. I got in with them. Then pretty soon the 4th Marines, 4th Division came by, and there was a general, and he took us, and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, we're 21st Marines." And he says, "Well, no, you're in the 4th Division now." Says, "We need it, and we're getting ready to attack the radio station." So, and then we had to have, he needed a lot more people. So we went with them, and we went over 267A and 267B. And we went from there, we went and took those two. Then we took the Motoyama village, where the workers were, and then we took the Motoyama radio station at that time, and then 267, and we went from there on over to 382, and as we got on 382 on the night the Japs threw hand grenades down into our shell hole that we were building for ourselves on 382 that evening. And we were to attack, and we attacked with the 4th Division on 382. My scout went up on top. We were leading the charge. My scout went up on the top first. My BAR man was following him, and then I was following that. Well, the scout went up on the lead, stopped, and he looked around. He couldn't see anything else up, so he pretty soon the BAR man came up there, and he started up there. He stopped and he looked around. He didn't see much on it. Then I went up there, and as I went up on the top of the ridge, one of the jumped back into his pillbox and grabbed hold of his Nambu machine gun, 25 caliber, and he opened it and he sprayed me across my chest. And I got the first 2 bullets went through my right chest here, went inside, went through my clavicle, cracked the clavicle, top of my lungs, came out my left chest on my left side, and had a big hole in my left side on it. And then I came out of my left part of and then it went through and cleaned out my muscle out of my left arm. So I of course went down. My BAR man went a little bit further, and he got hit with a hand grenade in his back on it. And he had all kinds of small holes in his back on it. But as I went down, the corpsman that was going over the attack force with me, he pulled me over and pulled me down into a shell hole. And I stayed in the shell hole there for a little bit, and they were fixing me up on it. And they wrapped my arm up, and they wrapped my right chest hole up, but they didn't see my left chest hole on it. And that's where all the blood was coming from on it. So that's where I got hit on the last one. And then we walked, the BAR man came up, BAR man, he came over and he says, "Wright, people are going to get killed in this hole." He says, "Let's get out of here." Because they were throwing hand grenades into the shell hole on it. So he pulled us up, and he and I walked out.